The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Boy, there's plenty to talk about on a Wednesday. And as we are each and every Wednesday, we'll be joined by Jimmy Hyams. Always looking forward to that. Couple of movements, including one in the NFL that I want to take a look at. Is it time for Tennessee to bring a fresh set of eyes in for this offense? It's been pretty inbred, for lack of a better term, with Alex Golish moving on and Joey Halsley being brought in. And that's the way that Kelsey Pope as well has been promoted from within. So that's the way Josh Heupel wants to do it. But there's some options out there and will be a ton of options. And Tennessee, a pretty good place to be an assistant coach. Also, hoops talk. And as for you Tennessee fans that are selling your tickets willy-nilly to anyone on social media, you know Georgia fans could pick those up. The last thing you want is for Neyland Stadium to become Samford North. So we'll talk about that. Key players in the Tennessee-Georgia game. You'll know some names. Who are the most important? That's on offthehooksports.com. And we've got movement once again with the college football playoff ranking. The Vols down to 18. Is that good or bad for a 12-team playoff? Because they would still be knocking at the door despite the season they've had. And more realignment news. And I want to get into Nick Saban, how much influence he's had on the conference. But we go ahead and bring in Jimmy Hyams, the one, the only. Jimmy with a fresh haircut, too, looking good. I need one, and I couldn't get in until Friday, Jim.
Just put some water on it, and it'll obey you.
Caleb's hair always looks fantastic. We're practically the three amigos of good hair, the way I would put it. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into some things. We love visiting with Jimmy Hyams each and every Wednesday. And so we've got, I think, a topic that's pretty interesting and pretty pertinent right now. It's brought to you by Andy Mason Realestate.com. So this actually broke, Jimmy, you might not be aware of it, but the Buffalo Bills fired their offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey. And it's not the only change that's being made. We already see a change at A&M and Mississippi State. And I believe probably out of all the changes that will be made, there is a good offensive coach out there somewhere. Let me ask you this. What about Josh Heupel bringing in a fresh set of eyes? Just in general, what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that he probably would not do it. Here's what he's got to do. He's got to bring in a quarterback that can run his system. I think that's what's missing. I don't think it's a flawed system. It's been too proven. I mean, even when you look at this year's team going into the Missouri game, they were averaging over 34 points a game. That's not bad. But I believe they've got a quarterback that does not fit their system to operate it at an optimum level. So now, if we're having this conversation next year with Nico Iamaleava, then I would say, yeah, you need a fresh set of eyes. I'd put a fresh set of eyes on the defense. I thought the defense was awful against Missouri. But I think with Milton, he has some limitations in running this off. In running this offense. So, and I can't. This is not an offense where Heupel's going to turn it over to somebody. Now, I know that Jeff Levy has run something similar. So if I were to get a fresh set of eyes, I might take somebody like that who could tweak it. But I think the bigger problem is having the right quarterback.
Interesting. Caleb, I hope you're having a fantastic day. I'm sorry I didn't properly introduce you. He is the king of Caleb's. I don't know what that means for Caleb Giroux, who also writes for Off the Hook Sports, but he's not listening right now because he's at the media opening. So let me ask you, Caleb, what about a fresh set of eyes? So I think it's Jimmy brought it up. It's kind of a two-prong approach here. One, should he do it? One, would he do it? I tend to agree with Jimmy. I don't think he would. Should, I think, is debatable.
Yeah, I don't think if he does bring a fresh set of eyes, I think it should be on the defensive side. I think Heupel is Now, you may think it's to a fault, Dave, and Jimmy, you may actually think it's to a fault too. So you guys tell me, but Heupel's very stubborn, but he's also very, some people say confident, a little bit cocky, believes that he is smarter than anybody else who's coaching football right now and believes that he doesn't have to listen to anybody else offensively. And I'm with Jimmy. I think it's about having the wrong quarterback. I think deep down, Heupel knows he has the wrong quarterback running his system. He knows he misjudged Milton, but I think he wants to finish out the season with Milton because he doesn't just have the right quarterback to run his system next year. He has a quarterback that was created in a lab specifically to run Josh Heupel. So, I mean, the way Tim Tebow was created, wasn't Tim, Jimmy, I always use this analogy. Tim Tebow was basically created in a lab to run Urban Meyer spread offense, right? If you could construct a quarterback to run Urban Meyer spread offense, you create Tim Tebow. Nico Iamaleava is that for Josh Heupel. Literally a quarterback created to run that offense.
And I think that lab was in Harvard. So, they got this one right. So I do think he's very well suited to this. I've heard nothing but good things about him. Now, he needs to put on some weight because he looks pretty fragile out there. He looks like he did one solid hit and he could break a bone. But I think that he's accurate with his throws. He's a quick decision maker. He's a good runner. He's an elusive runner. He's got pocket presence. Now, we haven't seen a lot of this proven, right, because he hadn't played enough. But this is based on my conversations with people that have watched him. So I think that the offense will be very good next year. Now, having said that, here's the caveat. How many of these offensive linemen are going to return next year? If he's behind an offensive line that is a sieve, then I don't know that anybody would be successful, including Hendon Hooker. So they got to make sure this offensive line is fixed. I will say this. Every offensive lineman except 2 could return. I don't think they will, but they could because of a COVID year. In fact, there are about 18 players on the team that are listed as seniors that could return because of a COVID year or a medical red shirt. In the case of I think it's Brew McCoy. But anyway, they've got a number of players that could return. We don't know what that looks like, but they've got to make sure they have at least an adequate offensive line next year.
Very true. Click that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate that. Brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com in Knoxville. Over 40 years of experience in East Tennessee. The absolute best service and best prices in the biz. AndyMasonRealEstate.com for your real estate needs. Jimmy, philosophically, is there something wrong with Josh Heupel bringing up a Kelsey Pope, promoting a Joey Halsley, and not seemingly going out and doing much of a search? Do you think philosophically there's anything wrong with that, or is that just Josh Heupel making sure that there aren't a lot of naysayers in the offensive meeting room?
I see that from 2 angles. One, I think he wants to promote people that have done a good job on his staff. The other thing is, I can't ignore, he brought in Alex Golish, and they had not worked. I don't believe they had worked that much before. And I thought Golish brought a few tweaks to the offense. I think where they missed Golish some is in the preparation and figuring out this is a good mismatch for us. We can create this, not necessarily the play calling, but the preparation for the game. I don't know if he's got that with his staff. Maybe he does. Maybe Halsley brings that. Maybe Pope brings some of that. But I thought Golish was beneficial in helping them, saying, we're going to run this set and we're going to run this crossing route, and their defensive backs are going to do this. Therefore, Jalen Hyatt's going to be open. I think that Golish helped with that. So from that perspective, new set of eyes, maybe somebody on the staff that sees things a little bit differently. It's a tweak. It's not an overhaul. And I think maybe that could help this offense.
I see. The thing that I would go with on that is we keep wondering if Alex Golish was a big loss, but Josh Heupel's best season that he's ever had, which was his first at UCF, he didn't have Alex Golish that year. Jeff Lebby was his offensive coordinator, and Jeff Lebby doesn't even really run this offense. I think it's very clear this is Josh Heupel's offense. An offensive coordinator under Josh Heupel is like a defensive coordinator under Kirby Smart. And I think
Nick Saban.
Or Nick Saban. That is true. That is true. I think Saban does respect Kevin Steele, though, who is at Alabama right now. But yeah, I think it's Josh Heupel's offense. It's the offensive coordinator title is almost in name only. And so I don't know if I don't think it's about Alex Golesh. Again, I go back to it, but Jimmy hit the nail on the head. I do think it's just pretty simple. I think two things. Tennessee still has depth issues, and they had more injuries this year on offense than they had last year because the roster is still not where it needs to be because nobody inherited a bigger mess in Tennessee history than Josh Heupel when he took over in 2021. And so with more injuries this year, they were already going to be limited. And then they also have a quarterback not fit to run the system to its degree. The other point I want to bring up is the only knock I would say on Josh Heupel, and I don't know if this is about not having a fresh set of eyes, and we're going to see this weekend with Dante Thornton and Brew McCoy both hurt. I think Josh Heupel's missed on some wide receivers that he's been recruiting. I'm going to be honest. I don't think he's evaluated the talent at receiver well because Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt fell into his lap. Whatever you want to say about Jeremy Pruitt, he and Hendon Hooker fell into his lap. The entire offense last year fell into Heupel's lap. And the question is, can Heupel keep winning when people he chooses are going to start succeeding?
Well, you say they fell into his lap. I say he developed them.
Okay.
Because Tillman had 8 catches in 3 years. Hendon Hooker was a reject from Virginia Tech. They didn't want him back. But I get your point. On the receivers, here's what's interesting to me. They felt like this Laycock guy was going to be a stud, and he doesn't see the field. Now, and there have been some other receivers that they've recruited that haven't played to this level. They got a 5-star receiver coming in next year. How good is he going to be in this system? So they have not developed this collection of receivers like they did Hyatt and Tillman and some others. But it hurt that they lost Brew McCoy. And then now Thornton's kind of figured it out. Now they're losing him. So they don't have the talent at that spot that they need. But I will say this, Caleb, from what I'm hearing, you're saying that Golesh had zero impact on the offense. I'm saying he had some, but it's hard to gauge. Did they go from 46 points to 32 because they don't have Golesh? No. But I think he contributed to the game planning, which was beneficial. So I'm not saying that they would be great with Golesh. I'm saying that I think he helped them with some game planning.
Well, Jimmy, to bolster your point, just one last thing, Dave. I will say to bolster your point, I do think it's sometimes a red flag when someone is in a position for a long time and is not promoted. And Joey Hawsley was a position coach or an analyst for about 12, 13 years and was never promoted.
Yeah, that's true.
You always question that.
Yep. Let's get to today's tough question. Switch it up a little bit. Fandom can have you doing some strange things, but so can your wallet. Today's tough question brought to you by Tennessee Cider Company.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right. So since Saturday, I'm seeing people go crazy on social media. I got 2 in the draw. I want you to go ahead and buy these tickets because I'm not going after that Missouri game. I mean, seriously, Jimmy, if I've seen one post, and I probably spend more time on social media than you do, I've seen
true.
True. I've seen at least 2 dozen. So we asked this question on our YouTube page, and that is the poll. So today's tough question, brought to you by Tennessee Cider Company, is: do Tennessee fans owe it to Josh Heupel to not sell their tickets to Georgia fans, to go out of their way to either make sure it's a Tennessee fan or just go to the game? Your thoughts on that in general, because the last thing you want is for there to be a bunch of red in Neyland Stadium, right?
You're right about that. Now, I'll say this. I'm not one to try to tell fans what to do, even though fans like to tell me what to do and where to go. However, if that's your choice as a fan and you feel like Tennessee has no chance and you want to sell it and you want to make a bunch of money, that's your call. I don't think it's a good look. I don't think it's a good look for Tennessee. I would think that if you're really an avid Tennessee fan, you'd want to be in the stands and cheer your team on. Even Rick Neuheisel with CBS says he gives Tennessee absolutely a fighting chance to beat Georgia. Now, I don't know how many others say that. He's not picking Tennessee, but that's what Neuheisel said at the quarterback club. By the way, I'll write a blog for you on that one. I'll have it to you later today. But I just don't think it's a real good look to do that. And I remember years ago when there was a huge booster that told me this. You remember that in 2007, maybe Alabama comes to 2008. They come to Knoxville. They beat Tennessee. There were about 25, 30,000 Alabama fans in the stands. And a booster told me, we're not going to – Philip Fulmer's not going to be back. I said, why? He said, you can't have Alabama taking over your stadium. Now, that's not going to happen with Heupel, okay? It's too early in the tenure, but you don't want an opposing team taking over your stadium. And if you have enough Tennessee fans that sell their tickets, I just think that's a bad look for Tennessee.
Agreed. Caleb?
I think it's a bad look for Tennessee. I agree. Now, I'm with Jimmy. I don't usually like to say – I have to amend something I said about 2 weeks ago, which is 2 weeks ago I said never blame fans for not showing up because it's capitalism. And Jimmy, I said one of the greatest scams in American history is professional sports owners saying you should support my team, you should support our team even when we're losing. No other business is allowed to say you should buy my product even if it sucks. Okay, so
by the way, click like and subscribe, everyone.
But no, it's true. Like sports owners have gotten away with that way too long, and they're the only business where you can literally have city governments just build their stadium and everything. But that's a different rant of mine altogether. But anyways, however, I do think it's a case by case. 2008, I got no issue with Tennessee fans not showing up for the Alabama game. The program had gotten stale. They were upset. They were right to be upset with what was happening. During the decade of dysfunction, if Tennessee fans didn't want to fill up Neyland Stadium, they had every right to because the administration was putting together a crappy product for them. If you're not going to show up for this game because you're upset that your team didn't win the East in Heupel's third year, you've lost all perspective about the program right now. I mean,
I agree with that, Caleb. What do you think about that, Jimmy? Because I agree 100%.
Yeah, I think he's right. I mean, you look at Heupel's won 34 games. No, that's not right. 24 games, I guess. 11 plus 7, 18 plus. Yeah, he's won about 24, 25 games. If you had said when he was hired and he would have about 25 wins under his belt right now, would you have taken that as a Tennessee fan? Absolutely. That 11-win season spoiled a lot of people. That averaging 46 points and over 500 yards, it spoiled a lot of people. So Caleb's exactly right. People have jumped on this bandwagon, and now they're, if you can't match that 11-win last year, there's something wrong. Your program's going the right direction. I don't think that's fair. You got to give him a number of years to do that. And Caleb's right about this too. He took over an absolute mess. There were 40-something players that could have been on the roster that weren't. The NCAA was hanging over your head. So I think Heupel's done a terrific job. Now, having said that, going forward, it's going to be interesting to see what happens next year. But at this point, I think it is a different argument about selling your tickets in 2008 versus selling them to an opponent this year.
Okay, I'm going to go to – you got SC Scout guy who's a South Carolina fan and said at least you're not struggling to make a bowl game in your third year, talking about Shane Beamer. And then Travis posted on our message board, if I had someone offer me $500 a ticket, I don't care if it's Mark Richt and David Pollock, I'm selling them. Mm-hmm. Okay, I appreciate Jimmy's stance on this, but I'm going to go ahead and say, if you're a Tennessee fan and you purchased season tickets, you paid all that money, all the program is asking you to do is go over there for the afternoon, make it to halftime, get hammered before if you want to, Jimmy, but it's not like we're asking anybody to lay concrete. I mean, you've already got everything set up from the season. You should go to the game. If it's a blowout at half, I'm not going to argue with you walking out, but I think you should go to the game if you're a Tennessee fan because this affects recruiting and affects how your program's viewed.
So what you're saying is you get hammered before your team gets hammered.
That's exactly.
I got it.
That's the steps of hammering.
There's some logic to that. I see that. Yeah. It gets back to my opinion. I think it's a bad look. You know, you probably think it's a worse look, I guess. So you're saying no, they should not do it under any circumstance. Part of mine is a lot of people want to recoup the money they have invested. So again, I'm not telling them what they should do, but I don't think that's the best decision for the program to go sell your tickets and have a whole bunch of Georgia fans in the stands.
I don't want to get off on a tangent on this, but I'll just throw this out there. If Josh Heupel had said on Monday that he was going to play I don't know, some freshman quarterback named, what's his name?
Iamaleava.
I don't think you'd have any problem keeping your fans in Neyland Stadium, Jim.
Yeah, I'm reminded when you say that, I think I've got the right year. The opening of the 2004 season, and Tennessee is going to play, I don't know, UNLV on Labor Day. And they announced that they're going to be starting Brent Schaefer and Eric Ainge. Those would be the two guys that are going to play. It was packed because fans wanted to see what these freshman quarterbacks were all about. A lot of fans are in love with what they don't know. And they didn't know what these guys would look like, but they've heard a lot of really good things about them. So they wanted to go watch that. Dave, I think you're right. I think if they had announced on Monday they're starting Nico, that there would be a significant difference in the turnout of Tennessee fans.
Or not even starting. Just I'm going to play him a couple series. I would take that. Use the promo code HAT, and you can get some free swag from Tennessee Cider Company and some delicious cider as well, delivered most anywhere in the United States of America. tncidercompany.com, tncidercompany.com. Use the promo code HAT to receive some free swag with your order. Let's talk some hoops, Jim, if you can. And my question is, what's more impressive, the men playing well or the Lady Vols struggling? Thoughts?
I'm going to go more impressive that the men are playing well. I think Dalton Connect's the real deal. I think he's a stud. He might be that guy that can get you a basket when you need it, whether it's to stop a run, whether it's to win a game late. He can shoot outside. He can create. He can take it to the basket. Tennessee, I guess this is certainly arguable. They haven't had a guy that you could rely on to get a basket in a crunch situation since Grant Williams left. So I think Connect makes a big difference. I think the Gainey kid is one of the 2 or 3 best players on the team. I really like him. I think he's a heck of a player. And I guess it was the most recent game. Those two combined for like 34 points. In one of the earlier games, they combined for 48. Those two, Connect and Gainey. I think they make a huge difference with this team. And I think Awaka inside is developing into a good player. Adu's gotten better. But I still go back to this. I think they'll have a really good regular season. But what are they going to do in the postseason? I don't know the answer to that. Maybe Connect's good enough. Maybe Gainey's good enough. Maybe the inside game will come around. But I think – and I enjoy the regular season of basketball. But let's face it, you're really judged by what you do in the postseason, right? So I'll be curious to see where Tennessee goes. Now, as far as the women are concerned, they won without Rakia Jackson the other night, but they had a 10-point lead with 3 minutes left, and it went into overtime. I'm like, they did some sloppy stuff, some the basketball IQ, they didn't play with it late in the game, but they did win without Rakia Jackson, so that's the flip side of that. But to your question, what the men are doing right now, and that includes and I know exhibition games don't count, but that does include the impressive performance at Michigan State.
And I guess I said impressive, Caleb. I probably should have said newsworthy, but anyway, I think Jimmy got me. We've worked together for a while, so he knows my missteps. All right, Caleb, what's on your mind, hoops wise?
Well, to Jimmy's point, Jimmy, I'm going to get to my thoughts on the Lady Vols in a second, but I just want to ask how you feel. I think one of Tennessee's problems last year, there were 2 problems. They didn't have enough shooters, which I think they have this year by adding Jordan Gainey, which you need shooters in March. But the other part was because Uras Plavsic couldn't really be a threat inside. I think teams sold out around the perimeter. And so Tennessee didn't get a lot of open looks. Do you think Adu and Awaka interchangeable can be enough of a force inside long-term where they have to respect that? So then there were going to be open perimeter looks.
Yeah, that's a good question. To me right now, from what I've seen, it's more likely that it's going to be Awaka. But I do think he can progress to that point. I think he is a guy. I think he's very determined. He's very strong. He's a really good rebounder. And I think he's a guy that's more likely to become a 10, 12-point scorer than Adu, because Adu does like to step out on the perimeter and shoot. So I think Awaka could be that guy. And if he is, that's going to make this team and this offense a lot better. So it's a good question, but I'm gonna answer that by saying, yes, I think Awaka could step up and be the guy to help open up the perimeter.
What is it you like about Connect? Let me get a little deeper into that.
Everything.
Creamsicle Mambo.
I like he can shoot outside. He can take it to the basket. He's a slasher. He's not afraid to take a clutch shot. And it was also funny. He told Rick Barnes when he came here, he said, look, one reason I selected to come here is I want you to teach me how to become a better defensive player. Rick Barnes has said, he said, Kennett twice has already regretted that because I've been on his butt in practice about playing better defense. But I like his all-around game. I like his toughness. I like his mentality. The skill set is there. I think he's going to not only lead this team in scoring, I think he'll be one of the top scorers in the SEC.
Okay, let me ask you guys both this. Caleb, I'm going to start with you. So heat's on you. Kennett has the best upside of a player since blank at Tennessee.
Best upside of a player since blank. Well, see, I would say even though he got hurt last night, Kennett doesn't even have the best upside on this team. I think he might end up being the best player on this team this year. But I think long term, I think Freddie DeLeon could turn into a superstar when he gets fully healthy. I just don't think he's been healthy yet.
Jimmy, thoughts?
Since Grant Williams.
Wow.
Go ahead.
No. I'll let you go, Jimmy, because I was going to.
No, I just think that I think his all-around game is scoring, his ability, and also the guy can rebound. He's playing better defense than I guess some people thought he might when he got here. But I really like the idea that this guy can score. He can score when you need it. He can score from outside or inside. And whenever they need a basket, I think they can rely on him to get it. And I think he makes his teammates better because he's such a threat. You got to cheat on him. You got a game plan for him, and that can help open up Vescovy. It can help open up Jordan James and some other players.
Dave, can I?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Caleb. Sorry,
I wanted to jump in and change the subject a little bit, though, because I wanted to get back to the Lady Vols for a second, if that's okay. Which is, you talked about how they played sloppy the last 10 minutes the other night against Memphis, and that's how the game went into overtime. Or the last 2 minutes being up by 10. That's not a first for Kelly Harper. This is her fifth year. And I think Tennessee's led the SEC in turnovers every year she's been head coach, if I'm not mistaken.
At least they're leading in something.
Yeah. And so at what point do we start questioning her? Yeah. Because this is becoming they have been a turnover machine ever since she's been head coach, and it hasn't changed in 5 years.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, because I looked at Jordan Horston, who was a turnover machine. She could give you 7 in a given night. I thought bringing in Destiny Wells, I thought bringing in Spears, although not a true necessary ball handler, I thought that would help. I think Powell's a pretty decent player. And then to see them just unfold the last 3 minutes with that 10-point lead against Memphis, I'm sitting there thinking this is the same old stuff. Look, here's the thing too. I haven't looked this up, but somebody told me this. Kelly Harper's record is not even as good as Holly Warlick's at this point in their tenure at Tennessee. This is a very critical year for her. If she can't win this year at a high level, I'm not talking about winning a national championship, but at least a high level, maybe the Elite Eight or the Final Four, with Rakia Jackson, with Jewel Spear. I don't know whether they're going to get much out of Tamari Key, but with the players that they have, Destiny Wells, Powell, if they can't win with this group of talented players, then win. So I think this is a critical year for her because I don't know that she'll ever have more talent than what she's got right now.
Okay, let me ask you guys a blank question again. Blank will be at Tennessee longer. Kelly Harper, Rick Barnes. Jimmy?
Caleb?
Notice I don't answer either one of them.
I know. How about that for an assist?
That's right.
I had this. Hey, I'm LeBron
that is
James.
actually
I'm passing it off in a clutch moment. So somebody
that
else
is
can shoot.
To be fair to LeBron, he is more of a passer than a scorer. There, everybody goes at him for that, but like passing is his strength. That's what he's one of the best passers of all time.
Hey, I wasn't making fun of him.
Everybody loves LeBron. Easy, Caleb.
Yeah. So, I mean. Yeah, I just think people hate on him for that, but it's like Magic Johnson always passed in the clutch too because he was a passer. But that is a good question that Dave asked, and it's one of the toughest questions I think we've ever had on this show. That is today's tough question.
Breaking the YouTube.
I got it. I'll give an answer. Caleb keeps dancing around it. Caleb's over there like Michael Jackson. He won't even answer. So
who you got?
Kelly Harper. And here's why. Rick Barnes, I don't see Rick Barnes staying around 4 or 5 more years. All right. Now, so that means Kelly Harper has to stay around 4 or 5 more years.
That's the question.
Yeah, it is. So you get back to this, and I know that there'll be some people upset with my answer. But so I think Barnes, and also Barnes is dealing with it, but he's not crazy about the NIL. He's not crazy about the portal and dealing with all that stuff. But he has dealt with it. But if you look at Barnes's age, I think he'll be out in a few years. I think that if Kelly Harper can continue to win 20-plus games and get in the tournament and make the Sweet 16, I don't think they would fire her. So I think that she would be able to sustain her career by playing at a decent level, but not an elite level.
Interesting. Caleb, let me get your answer to that question. Everybody on the message board seems to think Rick, but we'll let Jimmy out of here after we get your answer. Caleb, what do you think?
Well, just to be contrarian, I'm going to go Rick, because I think that, I think Rick Barnes he's at 69 and coaching like he's got 10 years left. He just seems young. Jimmy, I think one of the things that people miss about the Lady Vols, and I've talked to Dave about this, the Lady Vol fan base is not the fan base of the rest of Tennessee sports. It's very unique. And I wonder, maybe you can answer this, because it's unique and because there's a sense of loyalty to the program and the people who built the program, is there a split among the Lady Vol fan base over the fact that Holly Warlick was fired because there was such an older contingency that was so... Holly Warlick was there for 30 years as Pat Summitt's right-hand woman. And is there a split almost like what there was with Fulmer and Majors in 1992 among loyalists?
No, I don't think so. I think that a lot of those that when Holly was fired, the majority of the fans that I talked to, and I don't talk to all of them, I get that, but the majority of the ones that I talked to thought that Holly wasn't getting the job done because Tennessee had won at a high level. And so it was almost like the Bill Battle effect. So he takes over, Battle does, he wins 10 games, 11 games, whatever. Then all of a sudden he wins 8, 7, 6. Okay, the program's going downhill. You got to make a change. I think the majority of them looked at that and said, hey, we love Holly Warlick, but the program's going down. Change needs to be made. And so they made it. So I didn't see nearly a split, anything like the Fulmer Majors deal.
Great stuff, Jimmy. We appreciate it as always. Look forward to your pros on offthehooksports.com. Thank you, sir, and have a fantastic day.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Caleb. Y'all take care. Have a good day.
Jimmy Hyams, our Wednesday guest. Love visiting with him. No question about it. And look at me. No contacts, no glasses. Why? Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Enjoy life when you see better. Local vision service for LASIK, cataract surgery, and regular eye examination. And I want to underscore that they are local and they want to take care of you. They don't just fly in some doctor that says, hey, this guy's going to work on your eyes today. That's Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. CCT Eyes, right below ccteyes.com. So certainly check them out. Coming up on the program, key players for the Tennessee-Georgia game, how the Vols are going to pull this upset, and Caleb Calhoun is going to lay it out for you next. Stay tuned. Again, Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center. Ah.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TristarHatsCo.com. That's TristarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TristarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOK. That's hooked when I do to save an additional 10% off. TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Subscribe, share, like. Be sure and hit that like button. Helps us bring more people into the program. Follow us on Twitter at Caleb Calhoun, at the Dave Hooker, at OTH Sports Media. Download the app, Apple, Android. It's all right below. And be sure and relive the greatest season in Tennessee football with behind-the-scenes stories about the 1998 National Championship team. Click below for Celebrate 98, the untold stories behind the Tennessee Vols 1998 National Championship. Available in soft and hard copy versions. We still have some Fred White autograph versions as well. We'll personalize those for you, and you will love them. Key players that are in this Tennessee-Georgia game, and I'm going to make this a little bit difficult on Caleb Calhoun as we go through the list that you can check out on offthehooksports.com. At the end of this question, I'm going to ask you for the 3 most key players for Tennessee to pull an upset. So what has to happen? Which of these 10 players that we're going to talk about either has to fall flat on their face or have a magnificent game for Tennessee to be able to pull the upset? We go to the 5 Georgia players first, who you should watch against the Vols on Saturday. You've got number 5, Nazir Stackhouse. Any relation to Jerry at this point?
None that I know of. And Nazir Stackhouse does not rack up a lot of stats, but he doesn't stack a lot of stats. Because he is the nose tackle. And Dave, as you know, being a nose tackle in Kirby Smart or Nick Saban's defense is the most thankless job in football, isn't it? You have to get the most brutal push, and you get no accolades whatsoever for doing it. But he is key. If Tennessee is going to run the ball, Cooper Mace has to win that battle with Nazir Stackhouse. That's crucial.
And I got a hunch you will. By the way, it'll be the Vol Report with Jacob Warren up on the YouTube channel later today. So be sure and click that like and subscribe button to make sure you're involved, and turn your notifications on as well. All right. So more we have on offthehooksports.com. Jamin Dumas Johnson, excuse me. What?
This is a collaborative.
Sorry, I misspoke. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time.
This is a collaborative. Jamin Dumas Johnson and Smail Munden, both are good linebackers who are playmakers. I went with Dumas Johnson because he's, I think, the more highly touted player in terms of talent. He's got 5.5 tackles for a loss, 3.5, leads the team in sacks this year with 3.5. And so, again, to run the ball, Tennessee's going to have to contain him. You're going to have, this is going to be, if they can get past the defensive line and get to that second level, running backs are going to have to win some battles with these linebackers. Don't know if they will. We'll get to that when I discuss Tennessee's players, but it's crucial to deal with that.
Counting it down, number 3, Ladd McConkey. Any relation to Phil, the former Giants tight end?
No idea, honestly. Ladd McConkey is only 3rd on the team in receiving, but I'm just going to tell you guys this. Georgia's quarterback doesn't matter. Okay, Carson Beck is just there to distribute the ball because of how loaded the team is. You know what else doesn't matter, Dave? Georgia's running back doesn't matter because that offensive line is so loaded. I think you and I could get 100 yards behind Georgia's offensive line if we wanted to. So the running back and the quarterback don't matter. Brock Bowers would have been a Heisman contender to me, but he's hurt. He's playing, but he's hurt. I know he had a touchdown last week, but he was 3rd on the team in receiving. Ladd McConkey is the offensive weapon Tennessee has to watch out for more than anybody else. If they can figure out a way to contain him, And I'm not so sure they can, particularly without Kamal Hadden. They have a chance.
Okay, for the record, you mentioned his name, Bowers. I would have him on this list because I think he's still dictating a little bit of coverage. I thought that was the case last week against Ole Miss, but he is not 100%, so I understand not having him on here. Then Tyke Smith at safety, Kamari Lassiter at cornerback. How important is the defensive backfield for the Bulldogs?
This may be the greatest secondary of all time in college football history. Tyke Smith, by the way, Dave, leads the team in tackles for a loss with 6.5 and also leads them in interceptions with 4. He is the guy. The rest of the secondary plays shutdown football, and he's the guy that makes all the plays because of it. The one who causes him to be able to make the plays, though, is Kamari Lassiter, who is so good, I might put him on Kamal Hadden's level. And the
narrative changed quite a bit, didn't it?
It did. I'm joking, but honestly, I think Kamari Lassiter is, in all seriousness, I think he's a cornerback that you take in the as a top 10 NFL draft pick. He is a cornerback that shuts down one side of the field, Dave. He's going to be the best cornerback he is a Darrelle Revis. This is the next Darrelle Revis in the NFL. I'm going to say that now. I think he is. And the problem is Tennessee doesn't have Brew McCoy to go one-on-one with him. So what does Tennessee do?
Yep. And we have a post on the message board. It looks like Dumas Johnson may be out indefinitely with a forearm injury. So we'll see how that.
Then that goes with Smail Munden. So it doesn't really.
Say again?
I said it was Dumas Johnson and Smail Munden. So then Smail Munden would be the one.
Okay.
To go.
So we'll plug him in there. And then as for the Vols, you know these guys a little bit better. You probably know their names a little bit better. And then we'll discuss a quandary that I have. As you can check out offthehooksports.com, 5 Vols to watch. Chaz Nimrod, number 5. Will we see him develop into a number 1 type of receiver before the end of the year? I'd bet not, but it's still possible.
Yeah, Tennessee's only hope is Chaz Nimrod. I don't think Caleb Webb is ready, and Nathan Leacock hasn't seen enough action yet. So Chaz Nimrod is the guy who's going to have to somehow dictate coverage to open things up for Squirrel White and Ramel Keaton. I don't know if he can. And Kamari Lassiter guarding him, I don't see. If Chaz Nimrod has a game, then Tennessee's future is bright. I don't know if it's possible for him, but Tennessee needs him to have a game. So that's
okay,
the conundrum.
Let's break down the rest of the 5 to watch. It's on offthehooksports.com, brought to you in part by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Go to hemphousechat2ts.com, hemphousechat2ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK. The promo code HOOK. Number 4 on your list, Dylan Sampson.
This is the game that Dylan Sampson has to break out. This is his time. We have talked about it all year, and it hasn't happened. Jalen Wright is banged up. He was awful last week. Tennessee, Jabari Small is a steady back. Dylan Sampson is the playmaker. It is time for Dylan Sampson to look like Alvin Kamara. Tennessee needs what Cody Schrader did to them last week. If he doesn't, we will be calling this year an underachieving year with Dylan Sampson, given all the hype everybody gave him in the offseason.
Yep. James Pierce Jr., you could insert probably a couple of defensive linemen into this, but him in particular, he is the one out of Tennessee's behind the line specialist on the defensive front that can stack up physically and would play for Georgia. Would play a lot, maybe not as an underclassman because they've got so much depth, but he is one of the guys that you look to and say physically he could play for Georgia, so he has to have a big game for Tennessee. And then you've got Jalen McCullough at number 2, and number 1 is
it's pretty obvious. It's Joe.
It's Joe Milton. I'm sorry.
It is Joe Milton. This is it for Joe. There's no SEC East on the table. He's not going to be back next year. I doubt he's going to play in the bowl game. Vanderbilt's the next week. You got one last chance to make a massive statement and be remembered in a very positive way for Tennessee if you go out and ball on Saturday. I mean, if you're Joe and you still have NFL draft stock to look forward to, if you're Joe, you put everything in this game, right? I mean, you should be your whole the whole way to describe your college career comes down to this game, and everything about your draft stock comes down to this game. So can Joe do it? This is it. This is his chance.
Now, Travis asked, and he's right on the message board, going back a little bit, what the H they won't run him. It's not Samson's fault. Listen, Samson was completely lost in the Florida game. I don't even know if he was on the sideline. They forgot to play him. And then last week, I thought when Jalen Wright got hurt that they threw out Samson. And I'm wondering where Jabari Small is, because that at that point early in the game, I would want my bigger backs to hammer a defense. So I don't know what's happened with Jabari Small, but I will agree or echo Travis's statement. I believe that Tennessee has not done a great job of handling their rotation of running backs. I think their running backs are so good that they've overcome that, quite frankly. The college football playoff ranking comes down. The Vols down to number 18. Let me get your thoughts on Tennessee at number 18. That would put them theoretically in a position of making the playoffs. And I think that when you look at Tennessee being number 18, they would have to win out and they would need some help. But if it were a 12-team playoff, they would still be in position to make that move. Would that be good or bad for college football? Because let's face it, Tennessee a couple of times this year hasn't looked great. Does this look like a playoff team to you under a 12-team format, Caleb?
No. And this is what I was talking about on why it shouldn't expand to 12 teams. This is ridiculous. Next year, Tennessee would be in the college football playoff race still, and we'd be paying attention to things. That's absolutely asinine. It kills everything about the spirit of college football. College football is not the NFL. College football is not supposed to be where a 9-7 team squeaks in and goes to win the Super Bowl. College football is the one sport remaining, the one thing we can hold dear in this country, the one sport remaining where you actually have to perform in the regular season at a high level to be able to lay claim to a championship. It's absolutely ridiculous that a 7-3 team who lost all 3 games by double digits, by the way. Tennessee didn't lose any of these games close. It's absolutely ridiculous that next year, those type of teams are going to have a chance to go compete for a title. They have no business doing it. This is what I hate about the college football playoff. And for people that try to bring up, so everybody's bringing up to me like the Giants in 2007 going to beat the Patriots. Don't you want something like that? No, I don't want something like that. Okay?
Let me play devil's advocate for real, because you and I do genuinely disagree on this point. If you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, you should disagree with Caleb right now. If you're a Buffalo Bills fan, despite what happened on Monday Night Football, you should be against what Caleb's saying right now. If you're a Houston Texans fan, a Las Vegas Raiders fan, those are all teams that have about 500 records that are battling for wild card spots. It's very similar to what Tennessee would be doing now. Now, I'm not saying anybody at 6-6, Caleb, so don't misconstrue what I'm saying, okay? Nobody at 6-6 should ever be in the playoffs. But I got no problem with an 8-4 team sneaking in. I've got even less of a problem with a 9-3 team being an annual part of the playoff. And I think that's going to happen. I think you're going to have a 9-3 team, at least one, each and every year make the playoff. And I'm all bully about that, because teams like Tennessee would still have something to play for. If they upset Georgia and beat Vanderbilt, they would make the college football playoff. They would. And why not have more optimism for more programs out there? That just makes the sport bigger. So think about your retort to that, because I know you completely disagree with me. As I remind you, the Rick Terry Jewelry Design, they want to be your jeweler. Looking for affordable game day jewelry? How about the Fire Opals? A Tennessee tradition. Go to rickterryjewelry.com. Support our sponsors, rickterryjewelry.com. Your retort, Caleb, and why I'm insane in your mind. And I know I am.
My retort actually comes straight from the message boards, and it's the top quote. Rocky Top Tom, I love you. We disagree all the time. You nailed it. The distribution of talent in the NFL, as right. Dave, put the quote up. Just put it up. Just put that message up.
I'll put it up.
The distribution of talent in NFL isn't even close to comparable at the college level. Exactly. In the NFL, the team with the best record and the team that squeaks into the playoffs as a wild card, the margin is about that thin because there's so much parity in the NFL. The margin between the 12th team in the college football playoff and the number 1 team in the college football playoff is wider than the number 1 team in the NFL and the worst team in NFL history. Okay? It's absolutely ridiculous. And you're not going to get March Madness. You're going to get 12 get in there and get blown out. All you do is devalue the regular season, and you're going to hit a point. It's going to spike college football popularity for about 10 years. That's what's going to happen. But the long-term prospects of this is fans will start saying, I don't really care if you think it's going to include more teams and include more fans. Those fans will eventually be like, I don't care if my team gets into the college football playoff because we're going to get the brakes beat off us anyway by the Alabamas or the Georgias. It is asinine.
Okay,
a 7-3 team that lost 3 games by double digits should never have a chance at the playoff.
Here's why I disagree. Because I think the talent differential is going to close. The talent gap is going to close with NIL money. I was looking at the top NIL schools, and you would be surprised at some of the schools that are out there. So you're going to have, for instance, Ole Miss is considered by On3 as being a top 10 school in NIL and the way they run things. So those rankings tell me that schools are doing things the right way in NIL. You also have the transfer portal, so a guy like Joe Burrow doesn't get stuck behind another quarterback for the rest of his career. So what I think you're going to see, Caleb, now, if the future of college football is what you say and there's still this huge differential, then I'll be dead bleep wrong in 3 years, okay? But I think you're going to see the talent gap be a little bit closer. I don't think that Georgia's best team moving forward will be as good as Alabama's best team during their dynasty because of NIL and because of transfer portal. That being said, I think you could see some upsets in the playoffs, even though football is the most difficult sport to upset anybody. I think you would agree with that.
By far.
And I think you're going to see some upsets. I think you're going to see some close games in that first round, the way they have it set up in the top 4, get the bye. I think it's fantastic. I love it. And I have no problem with somebody that goes through the SEC and ends the season at 9-3, having a shot at winning a national championship. I got no problem.
So let's just get rid of the rivalry games. Let's just throw them all out. We know who the 4 or 5 best teams in the SEC are. Let's not have the regular season. Let's just put them in the playoff. Let's just start it now. Why not? Why not go to 64 teams and start the playoff in October? Why don't we? Okay, why not go to 120? Just put everybody in. What's the point of the regular season? Okay, this is going to be, I told you guys, if you guys are NASCAR fans, this is going to be NASCAR. Okay, NASCAR ruined itself with the Chase Cup that they started in 2004. They thought they could compete with the NFL on Sundays. Instead, all they did was they devalued the Daytona 500 because the Daytona carries no weight anymore.
Yeah, and the message board saying, "Why is Caleb so mad?" He's not mad. He's just enthused. I would tell you this. I think that NASCAR made a bunch of mistakes, but one, you're clearly right. They tried to shift their audience, and that's difficult to do. But right now in December, you've got a vast wasteland other than the NFL that people are going to watch. So I don't think that's as much of an issue. I think the chase for the championship was stupid, but I also think regionalism was a big factor in why NASCAR got hurt. Yeah, again, you're absolutely right. If the talent gap is as significant as it has been, in the history of college football, I'm saying that I think that they're going to be a huge glacial shift in college football. If I'm wrong in 3 years, then you're going to see a bunch of playoff blowouts, which would stink. Now, the one Achilles heel to my argument that you haven't pointed out, and I thought you would just then, I love the conference championship games. I love covering those. I think they're fantastic. I think it's important to win the SEC, but those ain't much more than a hill of beans 3 or 4 years down the line if you've got a 12-team playoff.
Yes.
That's my weakness to my argument.
Very good point. What it actually does more than anything, so if it still actually will, because of the getting the first round bye, there is going to be some incentive to win the conference championship game. But here's going to be the question, and this is actually crazy if you think about it. Do you try to win the conference championship game for a first round bye, Or do you just decide to not play hard in the conference championship game at all so you don't exude so much energy in case you don't get the first round bye because you don't want to have to play hard that week and then play hard a week right after that in the playoff? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I also like the battling for home field. Okay, let me ask you this. 12-team playoff or 8 that is all bowl games. Which would you prefer?
12-team or 8-team playoff that is all bowl games?
Right, no home field advantage. Because I think that's what makes it special. Everybody has something to play for, no matter if you're 15th or you're 6th in the final.
What I like, okay, this is going to be, people hate this, but I would like more auto bids for conference champions. Now, I get it. The conference champions are not the same. The SEC champion and the AAC champion, not even ACC, are not the same. But it gives it still creates a theater. So my solution was always, I love an 18 playoff because here's what I like. The 5 Power 5 champs get automatic bids. The 5, or I guess it would be now 4. Okay, but whatever. So let's just assume it was 5. My goal was always the 5 Power 5 champs get automatic bids. The best team in the group of 5, that undefeated, like James Madison or whatever, the best of all the group of 5 teams, they get an auto bid. That's 6 auto bids. Then you have 2 wild card bids. That makes the regular season still matter a lot. You can have the playoff, and it still means like every time you lose could be the end for you. That's the way I want to do it. But when you have 6 at-large bids, by the way, also, you're having to reach for 6 auto bids because there's only going to be 4 conferences that are good next year, and you're going to have 6 conference championships get in. So you're going to have like the AAC and the Mountain West get in.
Let me throw this at you. Here's the way I would do it. I would have a BCS formula that takes out all bias, that takes out all politicking, and it would be simply a BCS formula 1 to 12. There might be some years where the ACC gets 5 teams in, or the SEC gets 5 teams in, or the Big Ten gets 5 teams in. I got no problem with that. I would just slate them 1 to 12. Your thoughts on that? Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures there in North Knoxville, and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates. Go to Sports Treasures TN, Sports Treasures TN on Facebook. What would you think about that? Take away all the bias. You and I could create a formula based off strength of schedule, wins, losses. We could do that in a long weekend. We could do that over Thanksgiving if we wanted to, Caleb. It's not that difficult. So what would you think of that? Would that help or hurt your hate for the college football playoff?
It would actually hurt it it would increase my hate of the college football playoff, because if you don't have auto bids, you're just saying the top 12. Oh my gosh. Then you are like, it's like the regular season means even less now. At least factoring in the conference champion auto bids, the regular season has a huge impact on the conference champions. So
just for the record,
I'm actually with Rocky Top Tom again, by the way. We are seeing eye to eye.
Oh no.
What he's suggesting is a +1, which I thought before even the BCS started, they should have done a +1, which is you just rank the teams after the bowl games and the top 2 playing a national title. Just go back to all the old bowl tie-ins, all the historic bowl tie-ins, and then that's like an extra game, and then just rank them after that, and the top 2 play for the title.
Okay, so if they did it, the old BCS rankings, Tennessee would be 20 for the record. The top 8 would be in this order: Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Washington, Florida State, Alabama, Oregon. Texas would be your top 8, followed by Louisville, Penn State, Missouri at 11 with the current rankings. Ole Miss would be at 12. So you'd have all kinds of drama in the SEC. I love you.
Oh, yeah, because, Ole Miss really showed they can give Georgia some drama.
I love you to death. Message board and Caleb, but what are you guys talking about? I just created the most awesome thing ever. Purely BCS. Don't worry about that other stuff. We got more realignment news, what that may mean for the Vols. Stay tuned. 2 minutes. Caleb Calhoun, Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor, that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hardy as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
Here's where Caleb gets really mad at me when we talk about conference realignment.
A college football tradition like no other.
Yes, sirree, boys and girls.
Or a guy that just won't leave.
Wow, that is sad.
The Dave Hooker Show, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Back to Dave Hooker.
Hey now.
Iamaleava.
Sorry for the stumble on the board. Complications arise. All right, we got some conference realignment news. Let's get your thoughts on Oregon State, Washington State win exclusive control of the Pac-12. Not really a realignment news, but it could lead to realignment news. What does that mean for Oregon State and Washington State and the future members of the Pac-12? Oh, we got Caleb back here. What does that mean for the future of the Pac-12? We've got Oregon State and Washington State assuming control. What does that mean?
So this is a Pac-12 bylaw, and this was something that they all signed to save the conference about 10, I don't know how many years ago they signed it, but when they all thought the future of the Pac-12 was bright. Basically, the bylaw says that if you plan to leave the Pac-12, even if you're still competing in a Pac-12 during an academic year, you lose all power over what happens that year. So basically, by leaving the Pac-12, even though they're in the Pac-12 right now, the other 10 schools have lost any control, any voting power whatsoever on what to do with the Pac-12. So theoretically, Oregon State and Washington State, since they're the only ones left, just won a court case. That's very clear in writing. The ruling was right, that they could theoretically just say, we've decided to redistribute all the revenue from this year to only Oregon State and Washington State. No money for you, Washington. No money for you, USC. No money for any of you guys. So Washington, it's being appealed. But if this appeal doesn't work, these programs might not, they're in danger, because even though the Big Ten revenue is coming, Dave, I don't care how much revenue you're getting, you can't go a full year without making any money.
No, you absolutely cannot. Portions of the program brought to you by Apex Apparel Group. Design, brand, market your way. Outfit your entire company. Unique products to promote your business with unparalleled customer service. ApexApparelGroup.com. It's right down below. Go to ApexApparelGroup.com. Yeah, I got to ask you this, though. Is it good to have some leadership? At least Oregon State and Washington State are stepping up to be leaders of that conference, which has had no leadership. And it leads me to 4 Downs, if you don't mind. 4 Downs brought to you by our friends at City Heating and Air. 50 years in East Tennessee. I'll tell you more. 4 Downs is now, as it's brought to you by our friends at City Heating and Air. Go to cityheatandair.com.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Okay, so when you talk about one or two programs having control of the Pac-12, it makes me think of Alabama and the SEC. So I want to go to a couple of downs here via our friend Cooper Mays, who will certainly tell you to do what?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thank you, Coop. I appreciate that.
Coop here. First down.
All right. Do you think Alabama and Nick Saban control the SEC when it comes to key decisions? Yay or nay, Caleb?
I don't think they control it. I think they have a significant amount of power. I don't think they control it. Again, the reason this is Oregon State and Washington State is because they're the only two Pac-12 teams left. They're the only ones there. That is the Pac-12. Right. So, like, the parallel would be if Alabama was the only SEC team. I think Nick Saban is like, if you ever watched House of Cards before Kevin Spacey rightly got canceled, given what he's done in the past. But Nick Saban is like that politician that has, at any given moment, all the votes he needs in his back pocket to get a bill passed because he has wielded so much power. He is that. What Nick Saban has so many connections. He can, like you talked about it, you enlighten me on this. He can go to Shane Beamer and say, I need you to vote for this. I need that South Carolina to vote for this because I might need you and if you need a job in the future, you better vote for this after you get fired.
All right. Which down's next, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right. So I ask you this. Does Alabama have too much power recently? They weigh in on the pace of play. They weigh in on NIL. It's a lot of Nick Saban. Do you think he's really had an effect? I do know that he had an effect with the scheduling issue, that they wanted to go ahead and get that pinned down. I think that at the spring meetings, Nick Saban blew that up. To me, that's too much power. I mean, to me, this sounds crazy, but the conference is probably better off from a leadership standpoint. And you get on Greg Sankey all the time, but this is a different conference that is led by one team. I think you could argue that the SEC will be better off from a leadership standpoint when Nick Saban decides to call it a career.
If Nick Saban had this much power, there would have been more rules in place to slow the game down, and he didn't get that. And if Nick Saban had this much power but yes, I do. And here's why I do think he has too much power. You're seeing right now constant movement in Congress at the behest of the SEC to regulate NIL in a way that favors Alabama. Because the reason Nick Saban wants it regulated, Dave, let's be honest, Saban wants it regulated because Saban can't outbid Texas A&M or Tennessee for players. Texas A&M and Tennessee have more money. And I laugh at that because that's why they want to regulate NIL. They want the schools that are loaded with talent. They want the advantage of them being loaded with recruiting talent so money doesn't have to be a factor. NIL does not help the Ohio States, the Georgias, the LSUs, or the Alabamas. It doesn't help the schools, Dave, that are loaded with talent to recruit in their backyard. It helps the schools that aren't loaded with talent. Texas A&M is an exception because they're in tech, although Texas recruits are actually overrated, but that's a different story for another day.
Yep. Here we go. What down, Coop?
Tennessee Center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right. Third down. Has his leadership been good? The decisions that he's tried to push out there.
Who?
Nick Saban. So I'm saying absolutely not. I think the pace of play that he tried to stymie is more exciting than we've had in the past. I think that that was purely self-motivated. NIL, and a lot of people may see this differently than me, but NIL and the transfer portal, I think could have been better governed because it wasn't supposed to help in recruiting quite so much. But I have no problem with it being a part of the sport because I think the kids deserve more money. So has it been good or bad? I would say his directives and what he wanted to do for the sport have, for the most part, been bad.
Yeah, I think they've been bad. If Nick Saban had his way, Vegas lines would determine who goes to the college football playoff. I mean, this goes back to 2011. Nick Saban's responsible for the college football playoff when he had a vote in the coaches poll, and it was between Alabama and Oklahoma State. If you remember that year, Dave, Alabama for a rematch with LSU or Oklahoma State. Nick Saban voted himself number 2, and then he voted Oklahoma State number 5 to skew the BCS stats a little bit. Like, that's you shouldn't be allowed to vote if you're in contention for the national title during that time. But yes.
Yep. City Heating and Air Conditioning, 50 years. Before we get to fourth down, 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. Don't trust a fly-by-night HVAC company to tell you that your new unit could cost thousands or more. Go to cityheatandair.com. That's cityheatandair.com. All right, fourth down, Coop.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
Has it affected his bottom line, his win-loss record at any point?
No, not really. I mean, I guess you could say the time he voted himself number 2 to go win another national title against LSU. I guess doing that affected recruiting because Alabama was like raking in number 1 recruiting classes, but I think they were doing that anyway. It hadn't affected his bottom line. As a matter of fact, Saban trying to slow the game, Saban adapting the tempo, he's proven that he went about this the wrong way, if you think about it, Dave, because what did Kirby Smart do? Kirby Smart realized everybody's trying to run tempo. I'm going to slow it down, and no one's going to be prepared for that, and I'll have the advantage. And now Saban is following Kirby Smart and slowing it down. What Saban should have realized was, if I stick with my guns, I'll have an advantage over every other team. And so I don't think it's affected his bottom line. I think, if anything, it might have hurt his bottom line.
Interesting. Okay, let's go to this. We had a question on the message board that I want to answer, and it's a really good one. You can see it if you're on the YouTube page right now. Hit like and subscribe. We greatly appreciate that. Portions of the program brought to you by Herald Group Security Solutions, leadership, experience, specialization, addressing problems through unique mission-specific mitigation techniques, making your children safer at school, one school at a time. We're in private schools now, want to be in public schools. So be sure and reach out to your school administrator and tell them to call Herald Group Security Solutions. So the question from Rocky Top Tom is, do y'all see either the NIL being retracted as a policy or schools refusing to pay unproven incoming freshmen and paying their upperclassmen to return versus going pro? Retracted as a policy, no. But I think if you're Alabama or Georgia, you're wiser setting up your NIL money to boost up maybe those sophomores that aren't playing or those seniors that are considering going to the NFL. So I think you could see for some schools NIL being more internal than other schools like Tennessee, where despite what it's intended to do, it's being used for recruiting. Right, Caleb?
Yes, and I'm going to say, and here's why this NIL. First, let's start with the first one. Here's why the NIL will never be retracted, ever. This Supreme Court right now is made up of more employer-friendly judges than ever before. It's a 6-3 conservative majority, and they still unanimously ruled in favor of the athletes. This was the court that was the best chance for the NCAA to hold it up, and they lost 9-0. It's never getting retracted unless you repeal the Sherman Antitrust Act, which has been law since 1880, whatever. That's not getting repealed, and the Supreme Court is going to uphold that forever, never getting retracted. So, To the next point, that's a good point, Rocket Top Tom. You are right. The question is, how do they adapt to NIL? And there is a possibility of them not. If you are Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, you probably do have a little bit of pull to say, we're not going to pay you as a freshman at this point, but look at what you could get out of us. And there will be players that choose to come back because of NIL money. I think there's two types of players that will do that. Number one is basketball players, because Dave, you know as well as I do, college basketball does not translate to the NBA at all. There's hardly any translation from college basketball. The greatest college basketball players are not, like Christian Laettner is a top 5 college player of all time. And so there will be more value for a lot of players to stay in college and go to the NBA. College football translates to the NFL largely, except for quarterback. The best college quarterbacks, almost all of them. If I named the top 5 college quarterbacks, would any of them be NFL starters long term?
No.
Yeah. So quarterbacks will have a lot of money to make, more money to make in college and the pros. I think the rest, if you're an elite wide receiver in college, 99% of the time you're an elite wide receiver in the NFL, right? And
yeah, I think it depends on the position. let's talk about Cooper Mays for a second and his decision that he's going to face here in a couple of weeks. Brought to you by Don Self State Farm in Collegedale and Ottawa, as well as the greater Chattanooga area. Customer service still matters. Don Self, for well over 40 years, they built their business on reputation and taking care of their customers. Don and his team pride themselves on making sure you and your family won't have any surprises at the time of the claim. Customer service still matters. Don Self, your friendly neighborhood State Farm agent for the greater Chattanooga area. Call him, Google him, or you can check out the link right below for Don Self. Caleb, if you're Cooper Mays, I'm just going to throw random numbers out there, okay? You had an injury. It's your second season that you've dealt with injury, so that's going to be a black mark on your application to the NFL. They're going to say often injured, whether it's fair or not. And you're making, and I'm going to throw a random number out there. I have no idea. But you're making $100,000 a year, and you look at the chances of coming back to Tennessee or the prospects of coming back to Tennessee, and you can improve your draft stock from a 4th to 7th round pick to, let's say, a 5th to 7th round pick to a 3rd to 4th round pick. You're not making huge money, but you're making $100K. I think the minimum in the NFL is what, $800K? Do you make an argument to help your draft status? So we have one tangible player right here that could improve from a 5th to 6th grade to, let's say, a 3 to 4 grade. Would you do that if you were in his position? All of that's hypothetical. I want to be really clear. So I'm not Cooper Mays's accountant. I don't know what he makes, but just your thoughts on that.
I think that, but your draft status will be the factor in that, not whether or not you're making the 100,000. I mean, that's something that hasn't changed. I mean, that was a thing before NIL. I actually learned. Think about this, Dave. Al Wilson chose to come back for his senior year. They moved him to middle linebacker. That turned him from a 5th rounder to a 1st rounder. That alone, just coming.
Well, that's true, but in a lot of situations, money is a factor. And with that 98 team, you know, he came back, and I don't know Al's financial situation with his family either, so I don't want to speak out of turn. But yes, he did come back. However, Caleb, there are some guys where $100,000, which I think is an understandable going rate for a well-known player. I mean, I see Cooper on billboards. I work with Cooper. We pay him. So I think $100,000 would be some motivation to say, you know, I'm going to come back and improve my status as opposed to I need to go here and make this money like yesterday. I think it would change your thinking slightly, wouldn't it?
What it would do is it would actually allow you to make a more rational decision over your draft if you should come back, because you won't be chasing the money even if you can improve your draft stock. So it allows you to make a more rational decision about that. So you won't be Scottie Pippen in 1991 asking for a 7-year extension for $18 million, when if you had just waited 2 years, you would have gotten a $50 million deal. And so, yes, that part. So that is where it is better for the players in that regard, where they can maybe come back because $100,000 can keep them and maybe their families afloat. That's a very good point. But yeah, I think largely if you're Cooper Mays, for instance, given his family situation, he probably with or without NIL would just make a decision based on his draft status.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, Coop's not the best example in that regard, but there are other guys. You know, I felt like there have been guys over the years that needed to make money for their family, and you know, guys that were from Compton or guys that were rural, like Jason Witten. You know, I think that his family could have used the money at the time, and so I certainly understood that. But
and Fulmer decided to not help him trying to make that money. Sorry.
Okay, so I have a programming announcement. So are you aware of Mike Griffith? He used to work for the Knoxville News Sentinel, now with Dog Nation. Are you familiar with Mike Griffith?
Yes.
So we have 2 options for tomorrow. This is programming on the fly. Welcome to our production room. So, Caleb, my question is, Mike Griffith can only go at 9:45 tomorrow. So do we want Mike Griffith at 9:45, or would you rather me record it and then we can hold it and run it at some point? The fact is Mike's incredibly difficult to work with, so he has to go 9:45 instead of 10. So I ask you, should we go at 9:45 or should I record it knowing that he can be vociferous and I might be late to the show? Or should we just start the show early at 9:45 with Mike Griffith of Dog Nation tomorrow?
You're putting me on the spot on the show. You're having me do a
I
programming
am.
thing.
He put me on the spot via text right now.
I say
Travis says record it.
I say record it. I'm team record. Record it.
Okay. All right. We'll record it then. But I sometimes feel like I need you if a guy like Mike Griffith is going to be on the air. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports. Hit like and subscribe. Don't forget about the book below. We've got that available for you and some Fred White copies as well. For Caleb, I'm Dave. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.